Bathrobe, coffee forgotten on the porch, staring at 3 massive concrete barriers blocking my own damn driveway. Again. That's when I called my old army buddy and told him, I need something. Permanently immovable. Those 5 words kicked off the war that ended our HOA president's reign. And honestly, it's wild how fast the right kind of crazy spreads once you corner the wrong guy. I'm Marcus Rivera, 52, freshly divorced, just scraping my life back together after 20 years in the army moving tanks, only to land in Willowbrook Estates thinking I'd finally found peace. My circular driveway was my crown jewel, a place clients could park for my new IT business, a symbol of freedom after decades of being ordered around. I triple-checked every legal doc, every rule, nothing about home consulting, nothing about pickup trucks. I figured I'd finally outsmarted the system, but I didn't count on Delilah Thornberry. Picture a real estate agent with a dictator complex, bleached teeth, a white Mercedes, and a clipboard she wielded like a badge. She didn't even say hello, just walked up one morning, perfume cloud first, and announced, "You need to move that commercial truck immediately." She'd been tracking my clients and decided I was a threat to community standards. I tried to keep my army face on, but inside, I was boiling. 3 days later, she hits me with a violation, $150 fine, threat of $500 a day after that, all for running a business from home. I spent my whole weekend reading every bylaw, every scrap of HOA paperwork. Finally, I found it. A single vague sentence about commercial vehicles, loose enough to ban pizza delivery if you squinted. The earliest appeal? 6 weeks out. Pay now or else. See, Delilah thought I'd roll over. What she didn't realize is, I'd spent 20 years learning how to outlast problems. So I paid once. Then I started recording everything. Cameras, timestamps, the works. And I made it my mission to know Delilah's habits better than she knew herself. 2 weeks later, I caught her on camera at midnight, sneaking around my property, measuring my driveway with the precision of a crime scene investigator. Her Mercedes parked 3 houses down, trying to be slick. Next day, I called her out. Didn't know midnight surveying was part of HOA business, Delilah? She froze for a second, then launched into board speak about routine assessments. She was clearly rattled. But I'd done my homework. Colorado law says HOAs can only enforce rules that are spelled out, no creative interpretations. I quoted the statute to her face, watching her smile curdle. Emergency board meeting. Thursday. Don't be late, she snapped. The meeting was a circus. 5 board members at a folding table, Delilah running the show, 15 residents who didn't even live near me. She ran a PowerPoint painting me as some industrial menace. When my turn came, I passed out the actual rules. Home businesses allowed. Commercial vehicles defined as over 10,000 pounds. My truck only 6,200. Eyebrows went up. I pointed out the meeting wasn't properly announced. A technicality that shut the whole thing down, thanks to a retired lawyer named Frank in the back row. Suddenly, I wasn't fighting alone. But Delilah didn't back down. She escalated. Next week, my truck vanished, towed from my own driveway. Bright orange sticker, $350 to get it back. Frank was right there, quoting state law. No notice, no warning, illegal as hell. We paid the ransom, documented everything, and stewed. Turns out, Delilah was running the same playbook all over the neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson brought me a casserole and stories about swing sets destroyed, gardens fined, kids' playgrounds dismantled. People were scared to fight, couldn't afford lawyers, just quietly suffered. But now, they started talking. And then, Delilah went nuclear, mailing glossy hit pieces to the whole street, painting me as a menace, complete with photos, made-up neighbor quotes, and a community preservation committee that was just her and her real estate cronies. Neighbors stopped waving. Mrs. Chun crossed the street to avoid me. It felt like exile. But bullies make a fatal mistake when they pick on too many people. The Kellys showed up at my door, swing set. Victims, telling me they saw through Delilah's propaganda. More families joined in. The Garcias with their tomatoes. The Johnsons with their dog run. Even mild-mannered Tom Henderson, whose wife burned with righteous fury over a basketball hoop Delilah tried to ban for noise. We started pooling evidence, photos, letters, timestamps, everything. That's when Frank, who knew every legal nook and cranny, suggested digging into Delilah's own finances. What I found stunned us. Delilah owed the HOA over $8,000 in unpaid fees, 2 years of skipped special assessments, behind on her own mortgage, 3 refinances in 18 months. And here's the kicker. Colorado law says delinquent members can't serve on the board. Every fine, every notice she'd sent for 18 months was legally void. We kept it quiet, waiting for the right moment, while Delilah doubled down. She hired lawyers, who quit after learning she was disqualified. She tried a petition, got maybe 3 signatures. Social media? Total meltdown, with neighbors posting receipts of her harassment. She started driving past my house obsessively, snapping photos of my new plan, Operation Concrete. Justice. That's where my army buddy Danny came in. He and I built 4 decorative planters, 32,000 pounds of reinforced concrete, each one legal, within my property line, pretty enough for a garden show, but absolutely immovable. We installed them over a weekend while Delilah was at a real estate conference. When she came back, she lost it, called inspectors, threatened lawsuits, screamed at the whole neighborhood. The city said the planters were works of art, totally legal. Finally, it all came to a head at the emergency HOA meeting, packed with neighbors and news cameras. Delilah tried to rally the room with another PowerPoint. I calmly handed out copies of the real rules and our file of her misdeeds. Frank stood up and dropped the bomb. Delilah's been disqualified for 18 months, all her actions null and void. The crowd exploded. She tried to scream, lies, but the evidence was on the screen and in people's mailboxes. Within a day, she resigned. The moving trucks came. Her Mercedes taillights disappeared down Maple Street. Suddenly, neighbors were friendly again. Board meetings became potlucks. Gardens and playgrounds went up everywhere. My business thrived. Frank started teaching homeowners about their rights. Danny's concrete planters became a symbol of standing up to bullies. Sometimes, on summer nights, I watch kids play on those planters and think about how one person's need for control nearly wrecked a whole community. But you know what? Bullies only have as much power as you give them. Sometimes the best way to fight back is to become unmovable yourself. So, what would you do if your HOA tried to run your life? Drop your stories below. Let's talk about justice, power, and what it takes to fight back against the Delilahs of the world. You're not alone, and you never have to back down. You know, I wish I could say the story ended for good the day Delilah Thornberry's Mercedes rolled out of Willowbrook Estates. Like, the villain defeated, the neighborhood redeemed, credits roll, and everybody's happy, right? But life has a funny way of circling back around, testing whether the lessons you learned were just a phase, or if you're really the kind of person who'll stand your ground when it matters. For a while, things were good. Better than good, actually. The HOA turned into something people actually wanted to be part of. Potlucks replaced power plays. Board meetings felt more like block parties. You'd see the Kelly kids swinging high in their rebuilt backyard playground, Mrs. Patterson's casseroles showing up at every get-together, folks trading tomato plants and stories instead of glares and gossip. Those concrete planters out front became almost famous. Neighbors would drive over just to take a look, sometimes ask for Danny's business card. A few even joked about building their own anti-Karen barriers. I guess you could say peace returned, and for a while, we all kind of exhaled, like we'd been holding our breath since moving in, and suddenly realized there was fresh air again. My consulting business boomed. Turns out, a guy who can wrangle an HOA dictator makes a pretty trustworthy IT guy. Frank started running monthly Know Your Rights workshops, drawing crowds from neighborhoods all across Jefferson County. Even the Channel 7 news crew checked in a couple times, looking for a follow-up on the infamous Willowbrook Revolution. But, you know what they say about peace, it never lasts forever. It was about 11 months after Delilah left that the first crack showed up. Nothing big, not at first, just a couple of official-looking letters from the new HOA vice president, a guy named Ted who'd been quiet under Delilah's reign, now suddenly eager to make his mark. The first letter was about unregistered guest vehicles parked too long in driveways. The next, a warning about lawn ornament, uniformity, and holiday decorations being too distracting. At first, nobody thought much of it. Ted wasn't Delilah. He wasn't sneaking around at midnight with a tape measure. But the language in those letters felt a little too familiar, a little too stiff. Like someone trying on the old queen's crown and seeing if it still fit. The Johnsons shrugged off their warning about their son's Jeep parked in the street, but Mrs. Patterson, bless her, called me up the second she got hers. Marcus, I thought we were done with this nonsense. I'll be honest, part of me wanted to ignore it. Just let Ted spin his wheels. But then Frank dropped by one evening, a thick envelope in his hand, and that look he gets when he smells trouble brewing. You seeing what I'm seeing? He asked. Inside the envelope were half a dozen letters, different fonts. Same threatening tone, all signed by Ted or his compliance committee. See, that's the problem with power vacuums. The bad actors leave, but the system's still there, waiting for the next person, willing to twist it. I sat there in my kitchen, staring at my old Operation Concrete Justice battle plans, and felt that old itch, the one you get when you know it's time to fight. But wish you didn't have to. This time, though, we were ready. No more fighting alone. Word spread in record time. One group text to the neighborhood, and half the block was in my kitchen that Saturday, casseroles and all. Danny brought his blueprints again, but this time they were for a community garden he wanted to put in the old drainage lot. The Kellys volunteered to host an information night about HOA voting procedures. Maria Henderson, who once nearly moved out over the basketball hoop fiasco, showed up with a homemade banner. Willowbrook belongs to all of us. But Ted, turns out, wasn't just acting alone. He'd looped in a small group of new arrivals, folks who didn't know the whole Delilah saga, who thought neighborhood standards meant everything had to look like a magazine cover, no dogs barking, no kids in the street, no backyard fires or garden gnomes. Suddenly, we were staring at a new kind of conflict, not a dictator this time, but a divide. Neighbor against neighbor. The next board meeting was a powder keg. Ted opened with a long speech about restoring order and maintaining property values. He actually had the nerve to reference Delilah, calling her a cautionary tale about going too far, but a model for strong leadership. I looked around the room and saw faces tightening. Mrs. Patterson, stone-faced. Frank, quietly writing notes. Sarah Kelly whispering fiercely to her husband. When my turn came, I stood up and didn't bother with legalese. We didn't kick out a tyrant just to trade her in for a committee, I said, voice shaking a little but steady enough. This is our home. You want to talk about order? How about respect, neighbor to neighbor? You want strong leadership? Try transparency, not threats. And this time, I wasn't alone. One by one, folks stood up, Sarah telling how Delilah's rules made her daughter cry. Mrs. Patterson recounting the casserole she delivered to me in my darkest hour. Danny talking about the pride he felt building something real and lasting for this community. Even a few of the new folks started to waver, seeing the passion in the room. Ted tried to hold the line, but it was like holding back the tide. The board voted. New rules for transparency. Every enforcement action needing majority approval and open documentation. A standing invitation for any homeowner to join meetings or review records. Ted didn't resign. He just faded, shrinking back into the crowd, realizing he was outnumbered by something stronger than bureaucracy, actual community. And you know what? That was the real victory. Not the concrete, not the legal wins, but the simple fact that people remembered what it meant to have each other's backs. That next weekend, the whole block came together. Kids chalked up the sidewalks. Danny broke ground on his garden. Mrs. Patterson brought 3 pies and said, "We don't need an HOA to tell us what makes a neighborhood worth living in." Sometimes I still glance out my window and half expect to see Delilah's white Mercedes creeping by, or Ted with a clipboard, or some new challenge on the horizon. But I don't dread it anymore. Now, I know, no matter what shows up at my door, I'm not standing alone. We built something here that concrete can't hold, but community can. Real, stubborn, everyday resilience. And if you've ever tangled with your own HOA, or fought back against a bully, or just wondered if a single voice can make a difference, believe me, it can. Drop your own stories below, because someone out there needs to hear them. Justice isn't always pretty, but with the right people beside you, it's absolutely possible. So, what would you have done in my shoes? Where's the line between order and control, between a neighbor and a tyrant? Let's talk about it. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone take that away.